These pictures show the so-called Islamic State creating a new army in Syria and Iraq. Channel 4 News has gathered the first evidence of a systematic campaign to embed ISIS ideology into the next generation, including the recruitment of children as young as 8 as soldiers and suicide bombers. We speak to a 15-year-old boy who's just been through ISIS military training.
لأنها كانت في نظري دولة مظلومة يجب أن تفديها ولو بنفسك.
To an ISIS teacher who prepared children for death.
يحكون كلهم يعني أطفال صغار فكلهم يجاهدون. فأكثر شيء كان اعتمادهم على الأطفال.
And a boy soldier who paid a terrible price for resisting. Told for the first time, this is the shocking and sometimes bizarre world of the Caliphate, where young children are being taught how to kill and how to die. The so-called Islamic State has tens of thousands of children under its control. Children they are now actively recruiting as their next generation of fighters. 10-year-old Hamoud was one of them.
قالوا نضرب قالوا ما صار تضربون بالأسلحة بس اطلقون وتفكفكون فكفكناهن قالوا مركبوهن ركبناهن وسويناهن عاد قالوا نحطوهن على الحائط.
Getting more information about ISIS military training isn't easy. Thousands of Syrian refugees now live in Turkish border towns. But ISIS is here too. Ever since we've arrived, people have been telling us how there are Islamic State sympathisers among the Syrians living here in Turkey. That means that most of them are too afraid to speak to us. But some children were willing to speak out on condition of anonymity. At 14, Abu Ibrahim, not his real name, joined the ISIS army after they convinced him they were pure Muslims.
ويجب أن أقدم كل ما لدي لأنصر هذه الدولة لأنها كانت في نظري دولة مظلومة يجب أن تفديها ولو بنفسك.
But when they threatened to kill his brother, Abu Ibrahim lost faith in ISIS and fled. ISIS videos show children being put through rigorous physical training. But Abu Ibrahim says they're also being taught something much more dangerous.
في هذا المعسكر الشرعي تتعلم شيء اسمه السمع والطاعة. تقول يجب أن أسمع وأطيع لو أني سأموت. يجب أن أتدرب. دائما يكرر هذه الكلمتين السمع والطاعة.
ISIS calls these children cubs of the Caliphate. Abu Ibrahim says from what he and others saw, thousands of children are being systematically recruited across ISIS-controlled territory into the 3 different units of the ISIS army, and that children are central to its long-term strategic plan.
جيش يسمى على 3 تقسيمات، جيش ولاية وجيش خلافة وجيش يسمى جيش العدناني.
This ISIS video shows what Abu Ibrahim calls the second stage of basic training for children, where they're further coerced to commit violence. All of this seemingly unaffected by hundreds of coalition airstrikes. It's physically hard, but the main aim is to create a new army of unquestioning and what ISIS deems ideologically pure fighters.
فهم ينمون جيل الخلافة ومحاربة الناس ومحاربة الكفار بينهم لديه الولاء المطلق من هذه اللحظة.
It's that loyalty that ISIS is exploiting for another horrifying purpose. It starts with showing the children videos of suicide attacks.
فعندما تتكرر المشاهد مرة مرتين إلى عدة مرات فيصبح لدي أو لدى أي إنسان شعور بأني سأفعل كما فعل الشخص الذي قبلي فيذهبون إلى الدولة يقولون نحن نريد أن نعمل ننفذ عمليات.
And how young would be the youngest boy that wants to be a suicide bomber that you saw?
نفذ بهم شخص عمره 8 سنوات.
8. He's just a child.
ولم تستطيع أن تقنعه بأن يتخلى عن فكرته.
Getting young children to sacrifice their lives without question requires intensive indoctrination. We tracked down an insider who was in charge of that process. Until just a few weeks before we met her, Emil was an ISIS teacher who prepared girls as young as 10 to seek death.
كنا نحرضهم على الجهاد ونعطيهم إنه كلياتنا رايح نروح شهداء على الجنة كلياتنا يعني، فلازم الجهاد مذكور بالقرآن، الجهاد في سبيل الله، فلازم كلياتنا نروح نجاهد في سبيل الله ومشان الوطن يعني كمان.
She too narrowly escaped after becoming disillusioned by the scale of the violence.
كانت أكثر شيء إنه تفهمهم إنه يعني دولة بشار هي كافرة ولازم نحارب، كل واحد يحاربنا وضد، لازم نعلي كلمة الله، غسل عقول للأطفال الصغار.
These boys have also recently escaped ISIS-controlled Syria. Now in Turkey, they attend weekly de-radicalization classes to counter the influence of Islamic State indoctrination.
يجي منفوت على الجامعة يقول لنا أنتوا بتصلوا، نقول له إيه، يقولون لنا تحبون البغدادي، نقول لهم إيه، يقولون أنتوا تحبون البغدادي، نقول لهم إيه أكيد، يقولون إيه، وأنتوا تعرفون حدا يعني يقرب لكم شيء، نقول لهم ما نعرف.
Children are then taught to spy on their parents, who risk death if they object to their children joining the ISIS army. Boys are then routinely gathered in town squares. Here, they're offered money and food to join ISIS and fed anti-Western tirades. 10-year-old Bashar, also not his real name, was among them.
لما يجمعونهم هيك ويحجون معاهم إنه تعالوا معانا وهاي، يقولون لهم مثلا تعالوا جاهدوا في سبيل الله، راح تفوتون الجنة والمدري شكون، وآخر شيء يعني راح تكيفون وراح نعطيكم كم شغلات وهيك.
Boys are then sat in front of big screens and forced to watch videos of ISIS brutality. Propaganda films like this one, which shows the execution of Syrian soldiers in Palmyra.
ما يطلعون غير عن جنود بشار، شلون يذبحون؟
Ahmed is 11.
بعض نوبات ما نحضرها وإذا حضرناها نخاف منها.
They say they're often forced to watch real executions too.
إنه يحشد لدخول مدينة تضمر ونقول له هيهات هيهات.
But perhaps most disturbingly of all, ISIS releases videos showing these executions are increasingly being carried out by the boys themselves. Like this boy who beheaded a Syrian officer in January. Or this one in which a boy apparently executes 2 alleged Russian spies. Boys are told they too will be killed if they don't join ISIS by age 16. But death is not the only punishment for refusing to join ISIS. Omar is 14. He'd been serving with more moderate opposition forces. ISIS fighters captured and then tortured him to try to force him to join them.
بالسجن ظلت شهر ونص يعني تحت التعذيب ومشبوح. انك ليش ما تبايع الدولة وليش ما تبايعنا وليش ما تقاتل النصيرية معانا؟ ليش ذبحوا نص المسلمين.
He refused to join and was sentenced to a horrifying punishment.
لموا العالم كلياتها جدا بالعالم، لفوا لي من هنا ورجلي كمان وخدروها تخدير وكمان زاد رجلي تخدير. حطيت ايدي على الخشبة وبسطوا رقصوا لي ايدي لفوا لي اياها، بعدين زاد رجلي كذلك زاد قصوها ولفوا لي اياها.
These photos show Omar's actual amputation. And the man known as the bulldozer who severed his limbs. Omar's amputations were carried out just 3 weeks before we met him. He'd escaped Syria only days before. The price of his bravery is constant pain, depression and poverty.
من ننزل جو ما أطلع لليل مشان إني متعبة من الدرج. من يعني قطعوا لي يدي ورجلي طابت نفسي من الحياة. ما ظل ما أقدر لا أمشي لا شيء.
Omar's public punishment was used as a warning to children not to resist ISIS.
جابوا أطفال وشباب لما العالم إنه هذا كافر مرتد حكمنا عليه قص اليد ورجله وقص ايده ورجله. كل شيء واحد يقاتل دولة الإسلام بإذن الله لا نقصه لا نقص ايده ورجله.
The message this new ISIS army of children receives is that the Syrian government of Bashar al-Assad is the main target for now. But as their own videos reveal, their long-term plan is to attack the West whenever possible.
هم يعني بالمستقبل راح يخربون يعني كثير من الدول، راح يخربون يعني ويسوون تفجيرات لأنهم عندهم مخططات لتفجيرات وكذا، بس إن شاء الله راح تفشل يعني.